Well, our moms think we're funny.
Hi, I'm Acomi.
Hey, this is Turk182.
Welcome to Our Moms Think We're Funny.
Acomi, start.
So, today we're talking about Event Horizon and kind of a funny story as to what led up to this particular sequence of events for us. But we've been enjoying some of the videos off of James Rolfe, also known as the Angry Video Games Nerd, off of his channel Cinemassacre. And they've, in the past year or two, I guess, have started up what they call the Rental Review Show, where they set up in an old video rental store and they review old films that they either like or they really dislike. It just kind of depends. And usually it varies because there's like 4 guys who review typically. Is that right?
Yep.
So there's like 4 guys. So usually you get a really nice balance of opinions because you'll get guys who absolutely love the movie and then you'll have the next guy say, I hated it. And you get this really like interesting spectrum of debates amongst the 4 of them. So one of the movies they've talked about and reviewed was Event Horizon, and I watched that review and was like, that seems like a really interesting movie. So texted Turk and was like, I don't know if you've seen this particular review from them, but I want to see this movie. And so he was like, yeah, we can watch that this weekend. So here we are.
Yep. So I had also seen it and watching the Cinemassacre rental reviews, and I was like, oh, because I've watched a couple of reviews already, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I listened to some of the things they said, and I was like, you gotta left some stuff out. I was like, you didn't talk about this, and you didn't talk about that. And then we talked about, how same thing when they did their Congo review.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like the reviews, and I like watching his stuff. But I was like, come on, you left some important things out. And I was like, oh, and then when Acomi said he hadn't seen it, I was like, okay, let's watch it because I enjoy it. Now, okay, well, I guess we'll just kind of start here.
Yeah.
I saw...
Who directed this?
We'll get to that in a minute. I saw Event Horizon when it came out in theaters. I ended up watching it by accident. Nice. I was going to the theater with a guy, and we were actually going to go see Copland. And I somehow got the wrong times or whatever. Now, this Event Horizon came out in, was it 97, I think it says?
Yeah, 96, 97?
97.
Yeah.
Right, so, 97, it wasn't as easy to just, pop online and be like, let's check out the movie reviews. There were no smartphones. Blackberries were shite. I guess Blackberries still are shite. Do anybody even know what a Blackberry is?
I mean, a few people do, but I don't think they're really commonly used.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's supposed to be the So Blackberries, if I remember correctly, are actually supposed to be like more secure phones for company and like government use, but everybody wants to use an iPhone, which aren't as secure as the Blackberry. At least that's what I remember being told.
Interesting.
Because they weren't as fancy,
Right.
But anyway, so you couldn't just find like the movie times. And I don't even remember how I ended up looking it up. Maybe anyway. But we went to the theater and had missed Copland by like 20 minutes. But Event Horizon was about to start, and we're like, "Oh yeah, it seems pretty cool." So watched Event Horizon, and I dug it. I mean, at the time, I still like it, obviously. But
yeah, it's pretty good.
21 years later, it's not. I'm not going to say it's the best movie. If you're talking about a sci-fi horror movie, it's no Alien.
Right. Even
though you can see where they were influenced in some scenes by Alien. Like it's not a vent, it's not a hallway, it's the internal computer chip scene. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. They said he was in Duct, but yeah, I mean... He's like in the ductwork, but the ductwork is like lined with circuit boards that controls the core of the ship. So I guess we should like elevator pitch this movie for those who haven't seen it. Basically, the way James Rolfe described it is Hellraiser in space, which I think is kind of a perfect description.
So this is we're actually looking on IMDb right now at some of the pictures. Oh, god damn!
Yeah, yikes!
Oh.
Yikes.
So IMDb actually has a picture of a still of Okay, wait a minute. There's only two chicks in this movie. Where's one of them right there?
Uh-huh.
And so who is this busty chick right? Did the ship bring in extra people just to torture?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay. Word.
I think it's showing like all the souls that were like from the previous crew that were captured.
Well, this is supposed to be his crew. Because remember, he's like, "Let me show you," and
oh yeah, jeez, I don't know.
Anyway, so sorry. So there's a scene.
Somebody's got some rockin' tits.
Where like scenes, like images are flashed or whatever. IMDb actually has a still of one of those scenes. You can see a bunch of horrendous stuff there. I think before we go any further, if you haven't yet, watch Cinemassacre rental reviews on Event Horizon, because they do talk a lot about the original director's cut and how they filmed a lot of the really, really bad stuff.
Yeah.
That didn't make it into the theatrical showing. It's not on any of the DVDs or anything like that.
All the footage is destroyed.
Yeah, because they put it in like a salt mine or something like that.
Yeah, they stored it in a salt mine.
Yeah.
In like, what was it? It wasn't Iraq. It was like Cambodia or something like that.
Yeah, some weird place. Anyway,
some podunk country that nobody's ever fucking heard of.
but yeah, watch the review, because they have a lot more information on it than what we have.
Yeah, it's a very informative review.
Yeah, so you said let's talk about the director, right?
Yeah, so who the heck directed this, Turk?
So this movie was directed by Paul Anderson, who later changed his name to Paul W.S. Anderson.
As one does.
Because he needed to differentiate himself from Paul Anderson, the guy that, did Magnolia and stuff like that. And Paul Anderson, W.S. Anderson, you may know him from such great movies like Mortal Kombat, the first one. Not the second one, which is really shitty, but the first one.
Which totally isn't shitty.
No, not at all. Your soul is mine. This is the part where you fall down. I'm sorry, I could just... It's...
Those were $2,000 sunglasses, asshole.
He directed like great movies like Mortal Kombat, Soldier with I'm looking at his name right, Kurt Russell, Resident Evil, which we all loved the Resident Evil movies.
Isn't Mila Jovovich in those?
Yes, she is.
I like her.
Alien vs. Predator, the remake of Death Race, and then Resident Evil. So let's see what he's made. So he did Resident Evil in 2002, starring Mila Jovovich. Then in 2004 he did Alien vs. Predator. In 2008 he did Death Race. In 2010 he did Resident Evil with Mila Jovovich. Then he did Three Musketeers with Mila Jovovich. Resident Evil Retribution with Mila Jovovich. Pompeii, which I don't think actually had Mila Jovovich in it. Resident Evil: The Final Chapter with Mila Jovovich. So he's done a lot of movies with Mila Jovovich.
Wasn't he married to her?
Oh, and he's actually directing the adaptation of Monster Hunter. And who's in?
There's a Monster Hunter movie coming,
and it's got Mila Jovovich in it.
I want to see Monster Hunter with Mila Jovovich in it.
Directed by Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah, I'll take it, man.
And Ron Perlman and Tony Jaa.
Oh yeah, we've got to see that. We have to see Monster Hunter. So,
monsters are coming. So here's a picture, by the way, of Tony Jaa and Mila Jovovich hunting monsters.
And they have the big-ass club. The big old dang club from Monster Hunter. That's so cool.
Okay, so anyway,
little bit of a...
Hold on, let me finish ragging on Paul W.S. Anderson.
Well, I was about to say, yeah, so going back to the movie, a little bit of a bad stigma with the director.
Yeah, I mean, because, he's known for his high-quality stuff. I think he's won, let's see, 2, 3, 4, I'm counting the number of Academy Awards that he's won. 5, 6, 7 times 0. Yeah, he's a piece of shit. I mean, honestly, I'm just going to be honest. He's, and I'm not saying he's a piece like, he can't direct it. You can put a camera, put a bunch of people in front of a camera, but that doesn't make you a good director.
Right,
right. And I think we've seen that with a lot of movies lately where, it's like the movie is like turns out to be like really good, or it looks really bad, and they're from good directors. Like, well, once they got to the editing room, I was locked out, or this happened, or that happened. So,
Right.
so just because a movie looks pretty good or turns out good doesn't mean that the director is really good. I mean, Bryan Singer, for one, is a shite director, right? And no matter what you say, you can't tell me anything that he's done that was actually a good movie based on his direction. Not saying that he didn't direct some movies that were good. I'm saying his direction is horrible.
Yeah.
And so I think Paul W.S. Anderson is the same way. And how this guy continues to get jobs. Well, okay, you know what? Because I'm ragging on him, and I know we're going way off topic.
A little bit, but it's important. So.
Not really. I'm just running my mouth off, like spewing shit. It's like good thing it's on the internet because now I just look like everybody else. Okay, so Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. We'll see. All right, let's get down here. IMDb, and it says box office 40 million, gross 312 million worldwide. So, God, just that's God. These movies fucking suck. Oh man.
Well, I mean, he's certainly no Tom Kincaid. Tim Kincaid is it? Was
Tim Kincaid.
Tim Kincaid, yeah.
Dude, I'll tell you right now, I have seen more Tim Kincaid movies than I have Paul W.S. Anderson movies. And I'm not even including the porn that Tim Kincaid made. I'm just including just the ones, just the sci-fi ones. But I'm going to tell you right now, Dad Goes Fishing, man. I tell you, you've never seen gay porn until you've seen Dad Goes Fishing. The only thing I didn't like about the movie was that he never actually went fishing.
Well, he just went fishing for a different thing.
I mean, he fish hooked a lot of people, but anyway, skipping the witches. So I mean, okay, I guess I see he's bankable as far as that goes, but
well, like in the same capacity that like Michael Bay is bankable.
Yeah.
Like he's given good enough properties to where people are gonna watch his shit, but he's still a really bad director.
Yeah.
But all that said, I mean, Event Horizon wasn't a bad film.
No, it's not.
But we were discussing before we started recording, I don't think the goodness of the film comes anywhere from the directing.
I will say it's not poorly directed.
True.
But it doesn't have any, the directing itself doesn't have any style to it. There's nothing about the directing that stands out.
We can say that it's competently directed.
I would go with that. It
Okay.
is competently directed.
It's like, it's directed to the point of being watchable, but there's nothing in it that makes you go, wow, that was a really good decision on the director's part.
Right.
And like, you can say that with like, a lot of like Zack Snyder's films. You can say that with like Fight Club, movies like that.
Oh, David Fincher's movies, most
Yeah,
definitely.
oh man, David Fincher's great.
And we're not going to bring up like masters like Spielberg and Scorsese and stuff like that. I mean, because obviously,
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes without saying, but like Edgar Wright, I mean, good grief. Edgar Wright's directing totally carries his movies.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you could take a movie with an absolute shit script and he would still be able to make it look good just based off of his directing.
So I think that's a good point that we're talking about when we're talking about directing is you mentioned Edgar Wright. And so let's take, for example, Baby Driver.
Oh, yes.
So you look at Baby Driver, and the one thing about that movie is Baby Driver is written with a soundtrack in mind. Mm-hmm. It's written to a beat.
Absolutely.
And so when you're watching that movie, right, and of course it's edited to go along with that, but when you're watching that movie and you're seeing the way it's laid out and the way it hits those beats to the music, you know that had to be planned in the directing of it.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to just saying, here's a script, I want you to enter from here, I'm going to put the camera here, just make sure everything stays in frame, and let's go.
Right.
That's the difference. So when we're talking about directing and talking about style, we're talking about, when they talk about really good directors, how they say, this guy, this woman has a vision, and they know exactly where they want each piece to go. Like, they want you to kind of come in here, the camera's going to move this way, and that sort of thing. Kind of like because we're both huge Fight Club fans. We talk about David Fincher a lot.
Oh yeah.
If you watch the making of Fight Club, where they built a scale of the house, right, a miniature of the house, and David Fincher is talking about how they had to make the one doorway slightly wider because in one shot he wants the camera to move in and follow through this. Now you're talking about that how he's seeing that scene before they filmed it. I mean, they built a miniature of the house so he could plan a scene because he already had it in his head, as opposed to here's a script, I'm going to put that there. Now, I'm not saying that's how Paul Anderson does it, right? But like I said, we're talking about style and how that carries through and gives the movie more depth and life. I don't get depth and life from the directing. I get it from the script and from the acting.
Right.
And and I think you can say this with any movie is that a movie is only as good as like the three, or I guess there's many parts, but the three parts that make it up: the acting, the script, the directing.
Totally. Yeah.
And part of the directing is also like your cinematographers and stuff like that, and then the editing, because you have to have directed some really good stuff for the editor to really kind of piece it together.
Right.
And some editors can work magic with garbage, right? But they would say, I'd prefer not to work with garbage.
Right, yeah.
I mean, some people make really good art pieces from garbage, but, they'd really much rather have some, like, would you rather work in, like, in crystals or, old Coke bottles?
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say is, like, I can make some pretty decent art with, like, a stubby Crayola crayon, but I'd rather use Manga Studio here.
So, So that's kind of like going to what he does and getting to the movie itself, right?
It's got the Jurassic Park guy in it.
Yes, it does. It does have Sam Neill.
And it's got Morpheus.
So so let's bring up something real quick here about Sam Neill, which I think is important to say, which is Sam Neill in this movie. So we should talk about the movie, right?
Yeah.
For those of you who didn't stop in the middle of this to go and watch like Cinemassacre and then come back. So Sam Neill is Dr. Weir, and he's the guy that created this ship or designed this ship called the Event Horizon. The Event Horizon had this drive which allowed it to reach faster than light speed.
Yeah.
And on its maiden voyage, when it was supposed to go to like the farthest reach of the galaxy, it disappeared. It was gone for like 7 years, and the world was told because the world was told that it blew up, but it didn't really. It just disappeared. 7 years later, it returned, and they've sent a search and rescue vehicle of ship out to recover and find out what happened.
Yeah.
So that's where you get Lawrence Fishburne and his crew that come in there to get this. And they're none too happy because they were pulled off a more lucrative job to come and do this, which then takes them further out than where they wanted to. And each person has their kind of reasons for not really wanting to be a part of this. Well, I guess some don't really care, but Lawrence Fishburne doesn't want to be a part of it. There's and a couple other people are like, we were supposed to be on our way home soon, and we had another job we're doing, and now we're going. It took them 72 days from when they picked him up and left to when they actually get to the Event Horizon. So it's going to take them another 72 days to get home. So you're talking about almost half a year.
Yeah.
Just for them to do this thing and come back. So yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot for people that were already probably had been gone for several months.
Right.
So things start to happen aboard the Event Horizon, and it starts to frequent everybody, and then their ship is compromised, and they're kind of stuck out there, with a ship that they don't fully trust for one reason or another. Yeah. And of course, we're going to be getting into the spoilers of the.
Yeah. We'll definitely be pretty spoiler heavy here, but
but just to lay out the groundwork here.
Yeah. So basically, things start to hit the fan, and it gets pretty bad.
So going back to the actual script and the actors, so you've got Sam Neill, Dr. Weir, you've got Lawrence Fishburne as the ship's captain. And then you've got his extra people there. And you've got a strong cast. You've got Sean Pertwee. You've got Jolie Fisher. You've got Jason Isaacs. You've got, what's my man's name? Richard T. Jones. And so you've got a pretty good cast there. and they really do carry each one of their particular, like, characters and parts. Some
It's a
aren't
surprisingly small cast, honestly.
some aren't as fleshed out as I would have liked. So, for example, Jason Isaacs plays the ship's doctor. And at one point, Sean Pertwee's character starts to flip out, right? And it's because he doesn't like anything about the Event Horizon ship. He doesn't want to be on it. And as Dr. Weir starts to turn against the crew when they're saying, hey, things don't seem right about this, then they start to grow more and more distrustful of him.
Right.
And so that kind of flips Sean Pertwee, and Jason Isaac grabs him at one point and to hold him back and puts a scalpel to his throat.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, okay, so
You need to calm down. You need to calm down.
right, and then and he's not, and from the reaction from the captain, Captain Miller, Lawrence Fishburne's character, from the reaction he has, where he kind of indicates to him, hey, you've got a knife to this guy's throat. He's not even aware of it.
Yeah.
But we don't get any real backstory on him to say why, as a doctor, that was his immediate reaction.
Yeah.
We do get like
See, I just assumed that was the ship messing with him.
Well, and that's the thing, you don't really get, like, you kind of see everybody else's thing, like, where it's messing with them. You don't get one from, well, okay, so let's say Cooper is the comic relief, right?
Yeah, totally.
The other, what's her name? Peters, right? She's the other med tech, right? Mm-hmm. She's got an issue because her son's birthday, and you don't really know what's wrong. You just know he's sick and he's in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
And she hasn't seen him. She's not there for his birthday because they had to go out to rescue the Event Horizon. And so she's very, very guilty, feeling very guilty about that. And plus, Jack Noseworthy's character, who gets kind of like taken out of the picture, kind of not completely taken out, but he's incapacitated early on. And they have this relationship, which isn't really heavily described, but they do a good job of putting it together by... She calls him Baby Bear. He calls her Mama Bear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's a scene where he's in an airlock and she's trying to get him to open the door. And you kind of see that when she's away from her son, who's much younger than he is, right? Mm-hmm. He's like her surrogate son. And for whatever reason, this is his surrogate mom. You don't know anything about his relationship, but you get that from just that little interaction and just those names. Nobody else calls her that. Nobody else calls him that. But you get that right there. So that makes that kind of connection there. It's not incredibly strong, but you sense it.
Yeah.
You don't get anything from Jolie Richards' character, Stark, right? You don't get any, like, when the ship starts messing with people, you don't really get it messing with her.
Right.
Now, that may be a time thing where we just don't have time to show it screwing with each person.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that 30 minutes were cut from the film.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe it was, like, maybe it messed with her in the cut version.
Right. So, but at the same time, I don't think it's really necessary to show each and every person. Not like Suicide Squad, where they give a background on everybody except for Slipknot, the man who's going to die, and it's not really worth telling a story about, right? But yeah, I don't think it's really necessary. The ship's screwing with everybody, right? There's enough of an uneasy feeling. You see that she's present when whatever it is tries to beat through the door.
Yeah.
And I think that's more than enough.
Yeah.
It's like you see enough of that to be able to say, okay, it doesn't have to show where it's preying on her individual fear. You know that it's screwing with her too.
Yeah.
But
because
I think
it's screwing with everybody.
Right. But some people have more of a fear than others.
Yeah.
Cooper is not on the ship long enough for it to screw with him. Right. He spends most of his time outside the ship, either on the hull of the ship or floating around in space. But the Doctor, though, like I said, they don't really explore much with him, and I think we lose something in that, because when there's a scene where Captain Miller, who keeps seeing this guy on fire, he finally tells the Doctor, he's like, hey, there was another ship that was on, and we had to there was an explosion, this guy was on fire, but I couldn't save him because of fire and zero gravity, and we were in the life pod, and I couldn't open up the door, and, so I had to leave him behind, right?
Yeah.
And I always felt guilty about that. I've never told anybody the story before, but I've been seeing him, right? And the doctor replies, I wasn't going to tell you this, but this passage from the recording we had in Latin, right? I think I misinterpreted it. Instead of it saying, save me, it's actually, like save yourself.
Save yourself, yeah.
And so it's like he wasn't going to tell him that, right? He wasn't going to tell him that he felt like he that he misinterpreted the message and all this stuff. It's like, well, why weren't you going to say anything?
Right.
Why, and what were you going to do about that? But like, we don't get enough about him. And then, like I said, that scene where he puts the knife to the guy's throat, or the scalpel to the guy's throat, is like, and you also don't see the ship screwing with him.
Right.
So I think we missed a lot with his character, just because he has certain actions that he takes that we don't really know why. We're just supposed to kind of go with it.
Right.
And for a crew as tight knit as they are, that seems a little out of character.
A little bit, yeah.
Even when the ship's, and you can say, well, the ship's screwing with everybody, but we don't see a screw with him to the point where we would expect that kind of reaction and just take it on face value.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm sure you've got more things to go out.
I was just going to sort of run over, like, the full plot of the film.
Yeah.
So, obviously it's going to be pretty spoiler heavy, but we're just going to try to run through the basic overview of what happens in the movie. So it kicks off, they're going off to do this rescue, and when they get there, they get on board the Event Horizon, and we keep talking about the ship messing with people, so I guess we should elaborate on that. And it's various things for various people. It's mostly like weird hallucinations that are really violent and really graphic. And apparently this movie is extremely toned down. Again, go watch the Cinemassacre review, but this is apparently like dropped down significantly from what they'd intended on doing. But like the doctor lady, she sees her wheelchair-bound son, but he's like strapped down, and his legs are just mangled beyond recognition.
And he's got like maggots and open sores and stuff going on.
Yeah, which apparently in Hollywood they actually use real maggots for scenes like that.
They are specially grown for those scenes, so that
like sterilized maggots.
Right, so that if they get into your mouth or whatever, you can eat them or swallow them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So so lucky for this kid, but just things begin getting really, really intense, and then Sam Neill, Jurassic Park guy, you can tell that he's starting to be impacted very differently than everybody else on the ship. And so he keeps seeing visions of his dead wife, and that's obviously messing with him, and it's hitting him pretty hard. But then anytime the ship is messing with other people, he's sort of like getting into it.
Yeah, he's feeling it, and it's like, it's not like he's enjoying it, but it's like the ship is...
It's like he's willing.
Right.
It's like, okay, I accept this, I embrace this. So, Turk mentioned that there's the scene where, like, something just starts trying to break into one of the rooms, and everybody's just like, what the hell? What is this? What is going on? And Sam Neill just like jumps down from his seat and he's like, we should open the door. And he just trots on over, and everybody just surrounds him, and they're like, no, you're not doing this. You're not opening the door. And so it gets to be a lot of stuff like that where he's just like, no, the ship actually has a personality of its own, and she doesn't want us to leave. She's not going to let us leave. So, just people are continually getting impacted by it. They're continually hallucinating. He's getting more and more into it and becoming more and more accepting of the fate. And basically, it's revealed that the ship is pulling its power from hell. That like this warp drive core that's in the ship that's so revolutionary and allows it to break the laws of physics is drawing from the spirit world. So it basically becomes a science fiction / religious thriller.
Well, yeah, it's like a possession horror movie.
Yeah. So it's like The Exorcist meets Alien.
What did Cinemaster call it? Hellraiser in Space?
Yeah, Hellraiser in Space. Also known as Hellraiser 4.
Right, which but I would say probably the better Hellraiser in Space. But the ship actually, like with it screwing, we keep saying it's screwing with people, but it's actually kind of drawing on their guilt because each one of them has guilt. You know, Captain Miller has guilt about having to leave that guy behind in order to save everybody else. The med tech, she has guilt about leaving her son not being there for him. And then you find out
and Sam Neill has guilt over his wife committing suicide.
Right. So what you're led to believe, it's not explicitly said, but I don't think it needs to be said, is that he was working so hard on building the event horizon that he wasn't there for his wife and basically kind of abandoned her. And then she was just basically lonely and felt abandoned and committed suicide.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's what the ship is doing. It's kind of preying on their guilt. And it's kind of torturing them to kind of drive them maybe mad or just use that emotion and say this is the thing that you did and that they can't let go of or won't let go of, and so that's kind of interesting. But like I said, you don't get some of that stuff from the other people, so you don't know what it is that is that is weighing down, I guess you should say weighing down their soul in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. So it's my guess would be that it's feeding off of the weaker people. Because, like, somebody like Cooper, he's, even if he does have an event like that in his life, he's not going to let the guilt weigh him down. Mm-hmm. He's the comic relief. He's the person who's going to look at pretty much anything and laugh. So a lot of that, I think it's feeding off of the people who obviously feel guilt. It's kind of like the Agatha Christie story, And Then There Were None.
What do you mean?
Yes. Yes. Ten Little Indians, or by the older title, yes. But that's for another episode. But as the people are getting killed off, you come to realize the ones who are getting murdered first are the ones who experience the least guilt, the ones who feel the most justified in what they did. So the people who are actually super guilty are the ones who are tortured even longer. So it's like it's that kind of thing where it's like, well, obviously Sam Neill is just torn up over his wife because he feels directly responsible for it. And
I think a part of that, the reason it's preying upon their guilt is because it wants them, like it eventually corrupts Sam Neill. But I think that there's something special about him that I'll talk about in a minute. But it wants them to kind of give in, right? It wants them to break down and give in, which is like when the Peters, right, is chasing after her son. She sees her son running away, and she's chasing him. And of course, she's like, "My son's running, right?" And she's chasing him, and then it kind of leads to her death.
He's like, "You'll float too. You'll float too."
Right? She didn't. she fell crashing to the ground. But she didn't break down and just give in to her guilt. It was, and so I think because of that, it was like, well, I'm going to kill you, but, you're not giving in to this.
Yeah, you're not feeding me. Because she does have that exchange with the captain where she's like, well, his dad's going to get him for the holidays, but I'll get him over summer vacation, so it's okay. So it's like she feels crappy about it, but she's also rising above it and moving on.
And Miller, when he's talking to the doctor and he says, and the doctor asks him, well, what did you do when this guy's begging you to open up the airlock and save me? Is like, to save me is like, I close the airlock and save the other people. I feel bad about it, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel bad that I couldn't save him, but I don't really necessarily feel guilty about leaving him behind because I saved these other people.
Right.
So I feel bad that I couldn't save him. I feel guilty about not being able to save him, but not that I left him behind. So it's like he's not giving into that. So even though he's feeling tormented by this, it's not because he didn't do the right thing.
Right, right.
And for Sam Neill, I think that, the Dr. Weir, the thing that really gets him is, I think why the ship has an extra special connection to him is because he was building the ship when his wife committed suicide. So at that point, as he continued building the ship, he was kind of almost infusing it with his guilt. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
there was already that connection, not just because he's the maker of the Event Horizon, but because as he's building the ship and he's putting all of his love into the ship and not into his wife, she commits suicide. So now that love turns into this guilt. It's kind of like when someone, when people say, there's a psychic presence in a house, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, now he's basically imprinting this ship with it. This ship drive is actually a miniature black hole. And that's what allows it to basically fold space to go from point A to point B.
Right.
In the middle of folding space, instead of going from point A to point B, it pretty much goes to point 8.5 or like the space in between,
Yeah.
and which in this case was hell.
Yeah.
And then it tortured the crew, the ship's crew, and then hell spits it back out and be like, okay, now we want somebody else to torture.
Yeah.
And so because if just my impression, because he had imprinted so much of himself onto the ship, right? It was like when it came back, it immediately called to him, because you get that in the very beginning.
Yeah.
That it's like when the Event Horizon, it's almost like the Event Horizon sent a beacon to him as soon as it showed back up, before they pick up the distress call, that it's like, I'm home.
Yeah.
Because that represented everything that he had left. And then when it disappeared, it's like, now you know what it feels like to be abandoned.
Right.
Just like you abandoned her.
Yeah.
So you could even possibly say that the reason that the ship went to hell in the first place was because of him. He imprinted this thing on the ship. Mm-hmm. And so when it folded space, right? And so let's take, for example, Nightcrawler from the X-Men.
Okay.
It used to always be, that Nightcrawler would teleport. He would just go from this place to this place. Later on, a writer kind of said, well, actually, when he teleports, the reason there's that puff of brimstone is because he's not teleporting from point A to point B. He's actually opening up a portal to Limbo, and he actually crosses through Limbo to get to point B.
Yeah.
And that's why there's that puff of brimstone, is because that's actually coming from Limbo.
Right.
So if you look at the Event Horizon the same way, when it crossed over, instead of it just making that smooth transition between the two that's so fast, instantaneous, that you don't realize you've crossed, it went into Limbo, but it never came out of point B. And then it was like, oh, you feel this psychic energy here?
Right.
And it's like, this, it's like, oh, this guilt, this love/guilt, because the stuff that you see happening on the ship in the flashback is all this pain and everything else, but then there's also, I think you would say, that twinge of pleasure in there.
Right.
Basically like a masochistic, sadomasochistic thing. It was like, there's that I'm getting pain, I'm also giving pain, and I'm loving both parts of that.
And I love it.
Right. And then it's done. I mean, I think it probably used them up, and then it came back for more.
Yeah.
Now, this is just me adding some extra stuff to it that, probably doesn't really exist, but you don't know how long those people were tortured.
Right.
We don't know how long any of that stuff took place. Just because the Event Horizon showed up 7 years later doesn't mean that for those people in that ship that what happened took 7 years.
Oh, yeah. Well, it clearly operates outside of the boundaries of time,
right,
which is why it can travel faster than light.
So it could have been like 1 day for them, or it could have been 100 years for them.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
And the thing is, you find one body on the ship, which is frozen, you're banned, right?
Yep.
Corpsicle, right? But the other bodies outside of like blood and gore that's all over the place, which they never actually like do any kind of like DNA testing to see whose blood that is.
Yeah.
Right? Outside of that, you don't see any of the other like members of the crew, so you have no idea where they are. They probably are in that hell still being tortured.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most likely.
There is a flaw in the movie. Well, maybe
it was directed by.
Oh yeah. Well, I shouldn't say. I can't say there was a flaw in the movie. I'd have to look at the ending again to see. And I'll say, at the end of the movie, when they're trying to leave, so the two ships, the Event Horizon and then the rescue vehicle, the Lewis and Clark.
Yeah.
The Lewis and Clark is destroyed by Dr. Weir to make them have to stay on the Event Horizon. They say when they say that they're going to stay there on, they're going to like blow up the Event Horizon, use the lifeboat section of the ship to escape. They tell the doctor and they say, get Justin, who's in a containment pod and everything. Get him on the ship, and he's like, okay, I'll do that. He goes, I want to go to medical and get some my equipment first, right? Well, he actually dies in medical. But then at the end, you do see Justin there.
Yeah.
But that's in that nightmare dream sequence.
Yeah,
When they cut to the actual real life, what we see to be a real life, I don't remember if Justin's body was there. But they had no time to actually get him to the lifeboat section of it. So I'm not sure if Justin actually survived or not.
Yeah, we'd have to rewatch that. But yeah, so eventually Sam Neill totally falls to this thing, to this entity, to the ship. He winds up getting covered in cut marks and burns. He winds up getting completely burned alive, doesn't he?
No, because that was he was pretending to be the burned guy.
Oh yeah, he was just imitating him. So that's where the flames came in.
But he did rip his own eyeballs out.
He did, yep. Gouged him out with his thumb and skull fucked himself.
And I'm going to say something here and I think this is maybe just a Hollywood thing, right? Like whenever they showed anybody, especially when they show his wife, right, and her eyes are plucked out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You see all the way into like basically the back of their skull.
Yeah.
Which, one, if your eyes were plucked out, right, you just basically see into their brain.
Right.
So, and I guess maybe that's too hard to show or whatever, or maybe like it's just one of those Hollywood things, just like you shoot a car and it immediately explodes.
Right.
Well, I know they're shooting at the gas tank, actually, but you're never actually shooting at the gas tank. You're shooting it at the hole where you put the gas in. The gas tank is actually underneath the car.
Right.
So, but anyway, but that bothers me because it should just be black, or you should actually see like the wrinkles in their brain.
Right, right.
But instead you just see like this like pink cavernous area, which is just kind of annoying.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
One thing that Cinemassacre talked about, or didn't talk about, they did talk about, was that it was like the ship was the architecture of the ship, right, which was just kind of like weird looking and blah blah blah.
Yeah, well, I actually really liked it.
And they were saying, why does the Event Horizon look so weird? And they also talked about how all the extra footage and things like that, which were stored, poorly stored and were destroyed. When Event Horizon came out, HBO did a first look on Event Horizon, and I remember watching this. And during the first look, they had said that the design of the Event Horizon was built off the Notre Dame Cathedral architecture. They took the blueprints from that and actually just basically did them in metal, and just made them. They just gave it a scientific look. So all the columns and all that kind of stuff is basically the Notre Dame Cathedral.
That's crazy.
And because that's why it has that kind of heavy sci-fi gothic tone to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but again, not having any of that information there, and it's very easy to see why they say Cinemassacre was like, well, we don't have any of this footage here. HBO doesn't ever just run their first looks,
right.
just post them online, because who the hell wants to look at a first look for a movie that came out 20 years ago?
Exactly,
that should be on the DVD, right?
It should be, yeah.
Well, in this case, of course, it's not, because. But I remember that from when the movie came out 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know that. I mean, I always really liked the design of the ship. I thought it was really good because it's this hybridization of science fiction and like kind of arcane fantasy. It looks like something that like a dark wizard would put together or something.
Yeah, so. it's that it looks really, the tone is really, I couldn't, even without all the blood and the gore and everything that's all over the certain areas of the ship, there's no way I could live on that ship.
It's menacing.
It's the complete opposite of the Enterprise, which is very bright
Yep.
and sterile. This ship is very dark, and it would just put you in a funky mood like the entire time on that ship.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's brilliantly designed. Very brilliantly designed.
Yeah, okay, going back to the Doctor, and I don't remember if they talked about this in Cinemaster's review or not. But when Dr. Weir kills the Doctor, right? Mm-hmm. And he basically, beats him up, and then he disembowels him while he's alive and kind of strings him up in a pseudo Silence of the Lambs kind of way.
Oh, that was a total Hellraiser thing.
Yeah.
That scene alone is why they called it Hellraiser in space. Well, that and the blood orgy, which we'll get to.
I think that his part of his fear was basically being like I said, dissected while he's alive, because when he rips his shirt open, he's got that scar down in front of his chest, which is almost maybe like a like he had like open heart surgery.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that was a fear of his, right? That but they don't really go into it. But
right.
And that might be part of the 30 minutes or whatever of of stuff that was cut. But yeah, I think it, like I said, just looking at it has an interpretation.
Yeah, and I'd love to actually see like a screenplay of it, because I think from what I was seeing on IMDb, it looks like there were longer screenplays in existence. Just all the footage is gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the biggest thing left here to talk about is the blood orgy, which is kind of a difficult scene to discuss because everything flashes by, just like hundreds and hundreds of images just flash by, and they don't last for longer than like a single frame.
Right.
It's so fast, and so I don't even know most of what I saw. I know it was extremely unsettling.
So there is the one scene which is very clear of someone shoving their hand in someone else's mouth and kind of like down their throat.
Right.
Someone's attacking a woman, and there's clearly a scene where one guy is raping another guy.
Okay. See, I didn't see that. I saw, like, which, I mean, they did a freeze frame on Cinemassacre too, but, like, I saw the person who, it was, like, barbed wired to a 2x8 board.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, the wire is so tight on their skin that it's just embedded in their bone. It's really, that's pretty jacked up. Of course, there's, like, the spike going through the back of the guy's skull and out of his mouth, stuff like that. And it's like, this is the tame shit. This is what's left after it got cold. And from what, like, James Rolfe and them were saying, the stuff that got cut, they were, like, using actual amputees and stuff to make it really look like the limbs were getting severed. All kinds of stuff. Just really, really messed up stuff.
Well, I would say that that's not unusual. If you go back to Poltergeist 2, there's the was it the tequila monster or whatever, wherein the father gets drunk and he vomits up the thing, and then it turns into like that weird slimy creature that crawls across the floor.
Yes. Oh man, I had totally forgotten about that. But yeah, that is Poltergeist 2.
So they actually hired a guy who didn't have legs for that scene. In Spider-Man 3, there's a scene where Spider-Man is fighting Sandman in the back of the armored car, the Brinks truck, and he punches his fist through Sandman. They hired a guy who
had
was
a giant gaping hole in his torso.
So you know this guy. Asshole. They hired a guy who was an amputee, and he was missing like the lower half of his arm, and he wore the Spider-Man suit just so he could punch, and his nub would hit the Thomas Hayden Church in his stomach.
Yeah.
And then they CGI'd his hand, and then the back of his hand going through him.
That's really cool.
And there was a casting calls. So I used to go to, and I haven't been there in a while. I don't even know why I haven't been there in a while. But there's a website called Superhero Hype.
Oh, I thought it was like amputeecasting.com.
No, see, and now I've got to make that. Right. Anyway, maybe I can put a link to that on Ancestry.com. So anyway, there was they sometimes will post on Superhero Hype casting calls. They're like, hey, this movie right here has a casting call for it, and they will say, we're looking for people of XXX. And I think it was Guardians of the Galaxy. One of the castings for that said, we are looking for, and it was amputees.
Huh.
Because for some of the alien scenes, right?
Yeah.
If you have like people that are missing like this leg or that leg, they can basically put this big prosthetic on that missing limb and make you look like you've had this whole like thing going on, as opposed to trying to, try to hide an arm or this kind of thing.
Right. Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say that amputees are really big and high, but yeah, they do. There's a lot that you can. There's a lot for different movies, especially sci-fi movies or different things like that, where they can get roles and everything because it's easier to use them for things. So you wouldn't think that, hey, here's this guy that I wore a Spider-Man suit just long enough to do a scene where I punch this guy or whatever. And then, CGI is a lot cheaper than, whatever. So
yeah.
So I'm not gonna put them down for using amputees for that one scene, because it's actually done quite often.
Interesting.
And,
yeah, I had no idea how much it was really done. But yeah, it's definitely an unsettling scene. Like when the reviews were talking about it, I was like, how bad can it be? It's like, shit, I've watched Hellraiser. It can't be that gruesome. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it's just in those quick cuts, and I think one of the things that makes it even more graphic is that it is cut so quickly, and you just get the jarring intercut of screams where it's like that, and it kind of makes it more disturbing.
It's definitely unsettling.
And then, like I said, when you do, it's like watching From Dusk Till Dawn when George Clooney's character comes back to the hotel.
Oh yeah.
So when Seth comes back to the hotel and Richie, and he's looking in the room, and they just keep cutting to just different scenes. There's blood splattered here and there. And then you look and you're like what did I see? Did I see anything?
Right.
It reminds me of a scene from Rosemary's Baby, where I remember watching it because I'm trying to think of what it was.
Movie.
I'm trying to think of what it was that they were talking about. It was like I think it was like a documentary making of, and when they're making Rosemary's Baby, they're doing like the dailies, right?
Yeah.
And the studio was looking, and there's a scene where Mia Farrow's on the phone, and she's talking to somebody, and the camera's all the way in the hallway, but it's not centered on her, right?
Yeah.
And the studio was like, wait, why is the camera not centered on her, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, why is she like on like all the way on like the left right hand of the screen or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the rest of the screen is being taken up by this empty space here. It's like she's talking to somebody. We need to see who it is that she's talking to, right? And basically the response was, well, no, because if you can't see who she's talking to, right?
Yeah.
The audience is going to wonder, and they're going, just like what you don't see, your mind fills in.
Oh yeah, closure.
And then when they screened the movie or whatever, when it got to that scene, they said that all they saw were a bunch of people in the audience like tilt their heads to obviously if they could try to peek around the corner and see who it was. And it was like, that's why.
That's awesome.
That's why. And I think it's the same thing here, is that, you're only seeing snippets of things, and you're like, what did I see? Did I really see what I think I saw, and like, I say I saw the one scene there, you're like, I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
saw this one thing here, so it's like you catch little bits of it,
Right.
and you're like, whoa, like, what did I see there?
Yeah, yeah. It definitely preys on the way the human mind works, where it's like there was enough information registered in my brain to know that I didn't like that.
Yeah. And I'm glad that, I'm glad that I wasn't on that ship.
Yeah, because fuck that ship. So one thing that did make me laugh, which I mean it's not a comedy, so it shouldn't have made me laugh. But you've got that part where
You and I have a very dark sense of humor.
we truly do. But you've got that scene where Sam Neill, all like covered in scars and scabs and cuts and all that, and he's telling the captain how he's gonna like take his crew, and how his crew now belongs to the Event Horizon, and so he just starts wailing on him and just starts beating on him. He's like, "You're not gonna take my crew!" And at that point, there are 2 living crew members left. It's like, oh, okay. You could have started beating the shit out of him about 4 crew members ago, buddy. But
it's like if you really wanted this crew, you probably shouldn't have killed half of them.
so they do manage to finally get the escape, and there's only the 2 or 3 people left alive, and there's that horror movie twist right at the end where they're woken out of stasis. Jolie Richards is the one who's first woken up, which I'm okay with. I like her.
Yeah.
I've got a massive Hollywood crush on her. So and she's one of those actresses who I've had a crush on since I was like 5. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's always been.
I'm not sure if I had a crush on anybody at 5.
My hormones kicked in extremely early.
I can tell. Eating all that Mexican chicken. Sorry. For those of you that are unaware, okay, I'm not being racist. There was a thing several decades ago, back when they were first testing hormone engineering for plants or whatever, and they were using hormones to grow crops and everything faster. But what they didn't realize is basically it's a complete FOTG thing, right? Food of the Gods, H.P. Lovecraft. But what they didn't realize was that what they were doing to make the crops grow faster, right?
Yeah.
Was still staying in the crops. So when they would feed the stuff to the chicken, the thing it was the chicken feed was making the chickens grow faster, right?
Yeah.
That hormone stayed in the chicken. So when children ate that, they started to develop faster. So you had very young kids that were fully developing at a young age, boys and girls. So that's why I'm like, it's that Mexican chicken, because it was happening in Mexico.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that puberty kicked in when I was that age. I'm just saying that I was very, very young when I realized I was extremely into girls. So,
yeah.
Which I think I know I've talked about that on Korova. I don't think I've ever talked about it on the podcast, but I saw the film The Stepfather when I was 4 or 5 for the first time. Which it's not like it was a thing where their mom and dad were like, "Oh yeah, come on, we're gonna watch a family film." It was I wasn't really supposed to see it, but I saw it.
Right.
But there's that nude scene there, and that was "Oh yeah, I'm totally into girls."
I always wondered why my father watched Hee Haw, but that's another story. So anyway, the Event Horizon ship, I like the design of the ship. And we talked about the actual, not just the architecture inside, but the actual design of the ship is really kind of interesting.
Oh yeah.
Because, when it comes to building a spaceship, you have to worry about aerodynamics,
Right,
and ships that big are not built on a planet and then launched in outer space. They're built in outer space.
Right.
So, so making it look anything more than a big flying square or a rectangle is completely irrelevant.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if you're entering a planet's atmosphere, then yeah, you might want to make it aerodynamic. But, if for a ship that's built in space, it's probably never going to land, because you most of the time so take for example like a Star Trek kind of situation.
Right.
Your ship rarely ever enters the planet's atmosphere. You have a shuttlecraft, or you beam down.
Right.
In Star Wars, yeah, the ships kind of fly in and out, but even it's very rare to see something as big as a Star Destroyer enter a planet's atmosphere unless it's crashing.
Right.
So the fact that it doesn't have this aerodynamic look, whatever, is irrelevant because it's never designed to go into the planet itself.
Yeah.
The Event Horizon ship is one of those. It's really kind of interesting looking, but the whole look of the ship is really just for aesthetics.
Yeah.
But the ship has this very long neck that separates the bridge from the other parts of the ship. And one of the things you don't see in this movie, which again I don't think is really necessary, is you don't see the crew quarters.
Yeah.
But again, you don't really need to because they're on the ship. The whole movie, once they get to the Event Horizon, takes place in 20 hours.
Yeah.
Because they realize that they only have atmosphere scrubbers to allow for them to be able to breathe for 20 hours.
Yeah.
And then after that, they're not going to have clean air. And there's a scene in there when they're trying to get the atmosphere scrubbers, the clean ones, off the Event Horizon, get them on the Lewis and Clark so they can take off. And the Peter says to Smitty, she's like, you want to have clean air to breathe, right? And he's like, no. He's like, I don't give a shit whether I have clean air or not. I want off this ship. Which I love that line. She's
yeah, that was fantastic.
You want clean air? But no, I want off this ship.
Wasn't that what he said? He was like, not on this ship, I don't. It's so good.
So the whole movie takes place in that time. So the fact that we don't see crew quarters is, it's great. We don't need to see those because the only thing we're doing here is we're in the infirmary because Justin was hurt.
Yeah.
Other than that, everything else just needs to take place on the bridge.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think a big flaw of a lot of sci-fi and fantasy movies is that they try too hard to world build. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't need exposition on what makes your world cool. I just want to see it.
Right.
And so this does do a really good job of that.
So just to kind of touch base here, in Solo, we see a very brief section of the crew quarters when they're going through Lando's clothing. It's like, well, he sure does have a lot of capes, right?
Yeah.
Which that's so cute. We'll talk about Solo another time, right?
Flashback humor, classic.
Yeah. We'll dismantle that movie. You know what? I'm not even going to because.
Is it beneath you?
What? Okay. For me to pick on Solo, right? Is unfair because honestly, if we're gonna take a look at the most recent Star Wars movies,
right?
Rogue One, then Solo, then Force Awakens, then Last Jedi.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So if I'm gonna make fun of these movies, right? And that's in order of best to worst.
Right.
Then for me to just start with Solo is completely unfair.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel like revisiting Last Jedi and Force Awakens just so I can make fun of Solo.
Yeah, we've talked about that pretty extensively.
So, but in the New Hope, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, we never see the crew quarters of the Millennium Falcon.
Right, yeah.
And we're okay with that. We see, the gun turrets, we see the cockpit, mm-hmm. and then we see, I guess maybe two sections of recreation areas because where Luke does his training with Obi-Wan is not the same place where they play chess.
Right.
Because there's no chess table there in that scene.
Yeah, unless it retracted.
Yeah, I guess it could, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the ship layouts and blueprints for years and years and years now,
but we don't see, when we see the smuggling, set cargo hold, right? We don't see the rest of the ship, and we don't need to. I never wonder where they sleep at or what their beds look like.
Right, yeah.
You know, that's irrelevant. And the thing is, I know that they have to sleep on there. Like, if it's the X-Wing, obviously the X-Wing doesn't have like a Murphy bed in it, right? You know, but the Millennium Falcon should, because that stays out, you know, that just flies from place to place, you know, and there's times when he's going to be out there, he's not going to sleep in the cockpit. But I never thought about it. So they say, taking that back to Event Horizon, we don't see that, and it's okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's just completely okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that Event Horizon does right. Absolutely. And that's definitely surprising considering its source material.
The ship, they decide they're going to blow up the Event Horizon when they can't get off of it, and I love that Lawrence Fishburne's character, Captain Miller, is like, I'm blowing this ship up, you know?
Yeah.
But I think he makes a mistake early on that says, we're getting off this ship, and then we're going to launch some tactical missiles at it, you know, and it goes and blow the ship up until there's nothing left of it, right?
Right.
Then the ship hears him.
Yes.
And of course, he doesn't realize that the ship is alive. But the ship hears him, and that's when it kind of stops him. But there's a way of separating the cockpit, right, in the bridge of the ship, which is the life pod section, from the other half of the ship.
Yeah.
And there's that whole long neck, and then there's got multiple explosives in there to detonate it. And I was telling you during the filming that you really don't need all those explosives. They're really cool, and they make a really cool scene at the end, but really you need one set of explosives, and then you need a redundancy.
Right.
But multiple explosives along the neck of that ship, once you've severed the connection, then you've severed the connection.
Oh yeah, totally.
And here the other part of that is that you really don't need those explosives at all. What you just need is a section to detach the life pod from the other part of the ship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like detaching the saucer section of the Enterprise from the other part of the ship.
Right.
So having those explosives there are really unnecessary. It really was just a way to be able for them to say, we have an explosive that Dr. Weir puts on the Lewis and Clark and blows it up.
Right.
Which is a big flaw there, is the Lewis and Clark is tethered to, you know, the Event Horizon, but it blows up. It's just like any of they dock to it, right?
Yeah.
It blows up, but that explosion doesn't do any damage to the Event Horizon, which it should have.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of a flaw there. Smitty's death aboard the Event Horizon when he's looking for the bomb and he finds it is really good.
Yeah.
Because he just looks there and he just cries.
Yeah, just that Wile E. Coyote, like, oh. So yeah, that was pretty good. Although I don't like the fact that the bomb clearly has a button that says disarm right on it.
It does.
And he had like 6 seconds, so it's like, you could have been like, disarm, well, yeah. So, although it would have been kind of funny instead of the cry, instead of him just like making a dive for the disarm button and then it exploding.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the ending, it ends with like a false ending, like a dream sequence, because oh man, what's her character's name?
Stark.
Stark, yeah. You'd think I would remember that, but yeah. So Stark, she's woken out of the hypersleep thing, which it's totally the exact same type of stasis that they use in Alien. Like it's identically lifted from Alien.
Well, no, okay. Let me stop you there, because in Alien they actually are kind of like they're put in a stasis thing.
Yeah.
And Event Horizon they're put in a suspended. It's not water but liquid.
Yeah.
And supposedly, if you were actually going to travel like at a certain speed in space or whatever, you would have to be suspended in like a certain liquid.
Yeah.
For your body to be able to like survive that kind of space travel.
They do talk about that like the G's are too high for them to like not be in the pods. So.
The one thing about that scene that I think is kind of ridiculous is when they say we're going to open the pod and they open it up and all the liquid pours out. I'm like, you think there'd be a drain inside there and then you open it up, because I don't have to like open the pod up and then I gotta like have a mop and everything. It's like, God damn!
This is not a reference you knew. This guy gets it. So yeah, so she's woken out of the hypersleep thing, And then Rescue 1 takes his mask off, and oh, it's Sam Neill, and then he like grabs her, and then she wakes up, and she's just like freaking out and panicking. And the rest of the crew's trying to like talk her down, and they're like, no, it's fine. It's just rescue crew. We really need to get some help in here, guys. And then like it fades to black, which I liked.
Well, it didn't just fade to black. The rescue crew keeps saying, "Hey, we need the sedative in here, guys. We need someone to bring a sedative in because she's flipping her shit, right? We need a sedative in here." And the camera starts to pan away, and it goes through the one of the opening doors, and they keep saying that they need somebody, and then the doors close shut.
Yeah.
But no one ever comes in there.
Yeah, nobody ever does.
So it's like, are the doors just closing shut because the doors are closing shut? Are they closing shut because they've brought the evil back with them?
Right, right. Yeah, I like that it's not a resolution at all.
Right.
She's still flipping her shit as it fades to black, and that's so cool.
Because if you think about it, when they first get to the event horizon, they do thermal scans, and they're like, I'm picking up readings, but I'm not picking up any life forms.
Yeah.
And it's all over the ship. So to think that by destroying Weir sets the ship to go back through the portal, right? To open up the drive again, that's going to take them, back to hell, right? And so when they blow up everything, the ship kind of blows up too, but it actually kind of sucks itself away to hell, and without having to bridge, presumably it can't come back.
Yeah.
But because you had this influence that you kind of see early on all through the ship, to believe it is not in the life pod,
right,
I think is false.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's clearly still very much there with them.
But at the same time, though, your only other choice is to stay there,
right,
and die. So it's really no choice at all.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose situation. Definitely a lose-lose situation. So I was very pleasantly surprised with it. The premise is very strong. It's executed competently. That's the best way to say it. I'd say the cinematography is good. It's not great, but it's good. Writing is impeccable. It's brilliantly written. Acting is impeccable. All the actors are great. I don't think there's like a dud player in the roster that I can think of.
No, I would say that. I wouldn't say the writing is impeccable. I think it's done very well for the kind of movie that it is.
Yeah. Considering the genre and the subject matter, it's
right. And here is a really nice sci-fi horror pop. No, I don't want to even say popcorn movie. Just like a really good. I'm not trying to make like a stunning great. I'm not trying to make a cinematic masterpiece.
Right.
I'm trying to make a really good sci-fi horror movie, and it does a good job at that.
It's kind of like Commando, which I still haven't seen yet, but from the reviews and stuff I've read about it, Commando is considered to be the best formulaic action movie that you're going to see. It's like it meets every beat and every trope that you're supposed to see in an action movie.
Yeah, I guess you can say that.
So it's kind of like Event Horizon is the best sci-fi horror movie you're going to see in the fact that it meets every trope, it meets every main beat that it's supposed to see. It doesn't bring anything new to the table.
No.
It doesn't bring anything different to the table. It just takes all these pre-existing tropes that are supposed to be in that movie, and it pulls them through really nicely.
So I would say, for me, I wouldn't say it's one of the best, but I would say it hits all those levels, just like a lot of other movies. Where it's like, it's like bing, 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 and
which is satisfying.
Yeah, it's I mean, I own it, and when I had a chance to buy it on DVD, I did. I don't own it on Blu-ray. I don't think I have to own it on Blu-ray. My DVD copy is good enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got it and I liked it and we watched it and it's cool.
Yeah.
And I think if you just sat down and watched it, there are some unnecessary, I just think, jump scares in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I will say that this is before jump scares were a big thing.
Right.
And the movie, does that, I think, to set the tone in the beginning, but then it doesn't do that later on. It's like
Right.
I want to make you uneasy, right, to start off with, and kind of bring you out of your comfort zone, and then I'm not going to really use that anymore.
Yeah,
like now
yeah.
I've got all the rest of this to play with. Now that you're on edge, I've got all this other stuff to play with.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the jump scares didn't make a huge impression on me, which I'm very susceptible to jump scares.
Yeah.
But to me, like, a successful jump scare is one that makes me, like, startled and kind of, like, make a noise, maybe not flat out scream, but, like, at least an oh, and then I'll laugh. And, I didn't really get that out of the jump scares with this.
Right.
But, I was extremely happy with the movie, so... Definitely, I would say highly recommended. People definitely need to check it out.
Yeah, it's worth a watch. And I think it's one of those things where, it's not just worth a watch once. You might not need to watch it, every year, but it's one of those you would probably come back to maybe after 2 years and be like, oh yeah, Event Horizon,
yeah.
I'll check that out again.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's good, and it's pretty cool. I mean, like I said, all in all, even for a movie, talking about the special effects in it, right? The 3D effects. They're not the best, but I think that they look good for the movie.
Yeah, I mean, for 1997, they're great, especially compared to a lot of the other CG that was going around in 1997.
Yeah.
It's pretty solid, which apparently that's also where, like, well over half the budget was into really nice CG.
Yeah.
So...
So that is Event Horizon. Stay tuned or if you haven't already checked out, we're going to be doing a review of Deep Rising.
Oh yeah.
So is it Stephen Sommers, the guy who did the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, and I'm going to say that Deep Rising is one of my guilty pleasure movies.
Yay.
I would love to see a sequel to that because of the way the movie ends. I'm not going to say it's a great movie, but it has it's just a guilty pleasure movie of mine. I do enjoy it. So we'll be doing that. And what's the other one we're going to be doing soon?
Rollerball, right?
Oh yes, Rollerball.
Yeah, we want to talk about Rollerball.
My favorite Rollerball. So yeah, all right. So stay tuned for those if you say you haven't seen them already. And this has been shit.
It's been us.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm like, what are we doing? This is a Korova? No, this is
This is a KorovaEntertainment production.
So
it's been Our Moms Think We're Funny.
Yeah, Our Moms Think We're Funny.
I'm not sure they do anymore, but
and on Event Horizon.
Right.
So thanks everyone.
Bye.
All right there, folks. That was Our Moms Think We're Funny. Let's give them a hand.